Perhaps some of you have seen my Google Pixel Fold gaming video where I show you sort of the performance of many popular games here on the Google Pixel Fold. Personally, I think the gaming performance is okay. It's not the best gaming device in the world. It does get a little bit warm while gaming. And I would say that the battery life while gaming is a little bit lower than I would like for it to be. However, the performance overall, playing things like COD Mobile and things like that, you're going to get pretty darn good, consistent frame rates with graphics pretty well maxed out. So I do think it is a good enough gaming system. I don't think that this is something you're buying. If you're like a big mobile gamer, you're probably looking for a ROG phone or something like that, or perhaps you're going with something like a Z Fold that does have the Snapdragon processor, which I think is a bit better for gaming. But even still, this is a device you can definitely do some gaming on. So in this video, I'm going to show you two controllers that I think are a really good fit for this device. This first one is by a company called Nacon. Now, this is the Rig MGX. There is an MGX Pro. I believe I've got that name right. I have a link to both of these in the description. The Pro might be a little bit better just simply because the sticks are a little bit larger. You can see here that the distance that these sticks can travel isn't necessarily the best, even if they are able to click down for an L3 and R3. For playing shooters, these might not be the best controller you can get, but the face buttons are quite nice. Not super clicky, but they do feel pretty good. The D-pad is also decent. The shoulders, as you can hear, are quite clicky. The L2 and R2 are actually analog, I believe, so that it can actually detect like how far you're pushing the stick. So for racing games and stuff like this, this is a really, really good option. Let me show you what it looks like actually on the device. The first thing I will say is this. It may be totally fine to put your device in this orientation with the hinge. But personally, the way that I've been doing it is this way. And the reason for this is because I like to split screen things while I am gaming. And also, it makes it a little bit easier to install because you can set it like this, closed, open the thing up, let it kind of slide into its position and close it down. And then you can just open up your Pixel Fold like that, and you are off and gaming. Let's zoom out here so that you can really see how this looks. And it is very reminiscent of the Surface Duo in this very same gaming grip. Let me give you a quick example of how this works. Let's go ahead and hold the Xbox button and turn it on. Of course, with Xbox Game Pass, this thing works beautifully. So what we will do here is we will do exactly that. We're going to launch Xbox Game Pass, but then we're also going to launch YouTube up here on the top half of the screen. By orienting it like this, you also do have access to your volume and power buttons, which if you have it the other way around, you may not quite have access to. I want to point out both of these controllers today are Bluetooth only, and that is because trying to line things up with your USB-C port is going to be difficult. This to me is just a better option. You're not charging the device at the same time, and it is using Bluetooth, so there is a tiny amount of latency, but not enough that I can personally really detect. And again, it just gives you more freedom of how you're setting this thing into the grip. So what we're going to do is we're going to fire up a video on the top screen, and we'll fire up something like, let's do Valheim on the bottom screen. And as you can see here, it's handling both of these things just fine. Of course, you know, Game Pass is streaming, so it's not really requiring a whole lot of processing power. Let me turn up some volume, and you can kind of hear the situation we have going on here.
YouTube, very, very cool, and some other apps if you can find flex mode. He says he could not. There are some bugs in this which I think get fixed in the next one. I'm going to read them, and we're going to read the next one as well. The hinge gap doesn't work on Duo. They mean the what do they call it? The glance bar where you can see the screen.
Probably should have picked a game that wasn't as dark as this one was, but as you can see, it's working just fine. The controls are nice and responsive, and of course you can have something else going up there on the top of the screen. The only issue that I ever get with this is that the bar at the bottom kind of cuts off the very bottom of the screen in the game, but that's not too big of an issue for the most part. Let's go ahead and let's quit this game, and I'll show you Tunic real quick because I think that one's going to be a bit brighter and a bit easier to see what on earth is actually going on. Syncing data, of course, Game Pass is great for stuff like that. Okay, here we go. So maybe you can better see now where the bottom is ever so slightly cut off. I mean, you can see also how responsive this is, right? Like, this is really not bad at all. These controls work very, very well. I would say this is absolutely playable, and like I said before, you can be multitasking at the same time. So this is the Nacon Rig MGX. I'm a big fan of this controller. All the stuff with Game Pass works absolutely beautifully, and of course, I'm not going to go over like every Android game that works that has native controller support, because that's just something I don't have the time or the knowledge to like dig deeply into. But games that do have native controller support should use this controller just fine. But we do have another option. Let's go ahead and close the Pixel Fold, and let's try and take it out of the grip, which is like the sketchiest part of that because it does grip very, very hard. And we'll look at the Gamesir X2. Of course, Gamesir does make some controllers that are USB-C, but again, like I said before, we are sticking with Bluetooth only just because you don't want to have to try and line this thing up with the USB-C port. We're gonna do exactly the same thing. Drop it in, boom, there you go, and then open the thing up. Let's go ahead and turn on the Gamesir controller, which you can see up here we are now connected to as well. And we're going to do the same sort of thing. And as we're loading into Hitman here, I'll show you some of the things about this controller. For one, the joysticks are quite a bit larger, so the area that they can travel is greater. So if you're playing shooters, this is going to be a better option than the other controller. They're both quite comfortable. This one does have slightly clickier face buttons and a much clickier D-pad, but I do think they're both pretty good, just a different feel overall. The shoulder buttons are different. They're very, very clicky, as you can hear on both of them. But again, if you're playing shooters, this is going to be your better option. I just had the touchscreen controls pop up, but those should dismiss as soon as you actually use a controller. All right, there you go. We're actually into the game itself, so we're going to get our video playing again. Touch back down here, and there we go. We're off and running. So with a shooter, a game like this, a third-person game or first-person game like this, you are likely to see a little bit more in the way of latency, just moving around. Just basically how the game is constructed. It's not quite as conducive to streaming controls like this, but I do think that it still is largely playable, and it'll definitely make for a sufficient test of this controller. So let's see if we can run over here and knock this poor gentleman unconscious. Forgot you had to pump that button. You can see here, this is working relatively well, but I do want to try out and show you a game that is not a streaming game. So let's jump into our little multitasking here, and let's grab Minecraft, which should work basically identically on either one of these controllers. As you can see, this is a game that has native controller support and works beautifully with something like this. We are off and running, playing some Minecraft. Almost jumped immediately directly off of a cliff because, that's just how I do things. This is working really, really well. If I was going to do mobile gaming with something like this, this is absolutely the way that I would be doing it. I'm not going to be doing this using touchscreen controls because I frankly just can't really use them. I'm terrible at them. But this is so much better, and the ability to multitask, to have a video going or something like that up at the top, really, really nice. So going through these in the order that they were talked about, this is the Rig Nacon MGX. This was the very first one, $69.99. Right now there's a $10 coupon, so that's pretty decent. This is the Pro model that I talked about, much larger handles to hold on to. The joysticks are also bigger. It should be a very, very similar experience, just with a bit of a more Pro style design. $89 for that one. This is definitely the most expensive controller that I'm going to talk about. I've not personally used it, but I do know people that have and have really, really enjoyed it. And then of course this is the Gamesir X2, $59.99 as well, with a $7 coupon. This is probably the one I would ever so slightly lean towards these days. I really do like the one from Nacon, but the joysticks are just better on this one, so that's definitely a good option as well. I'll have links, like I said, to all three of these in the description down below. They are affiliate links. If you click on those links and purchase those controllers or anything else on Amazon for like the next 24 hours, I will get commission on those sales, and that will help support the channel. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.